When Nazi Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, over 6,000 Panther tanks had rolled off assembly lines during the war. But when the guns finally fell silent across Europe, only a fraction remained operational. Hundreds sat abandoned in French fields, half buried in Belgian forests, or lined up in captured German factories. These 45-ton steel Predators, tanks that had terrorized Allied forces with their devastating 75mm guns and nearly impenetrable sloped armor, now sat motionless, their crews vanished into the chaos of a shattered Reich. What came next was unprecedented. A massive, secretive race between former allies to capture, study, and exploit Germany's most advanced tank technology. This is the story of what happened to the Panther tanks after World War II, a tale of intelligence scrambles, surprising second lives, and an enduring influence that would shape armored warfare for decades to come. In the spring of 1945, American tank crews advancing through Germany encountered a surreal landscape. Entire columns of abandoned Panthers lined roadsides, their engines cold, fuel tanks bone-dry. At the Daimler-Benz and MAN factories, Allied soldiers discovered partially assembled Panthers still sitting on production lines, frozen mid-construction like mechanical ghosts. Intelligence officers estimated that between 800 and 1,000 Panthers remained on European soil in various states of repair, the largest concentration of advanced armor technology ever assembled. American tank crews who had faced Panthers in combat spoke of them with grudging respect. These were the same tanks that had knocked out Shermans from distances exceeding 2,000 yards, their sloped 80mm frontal armor deflecting American shells with ease. But time was running out. Even as American engineers began cataloging the Panthers, Soviet forces were racing westward, securing their own prizes from the collapsed German war machine. Within days of Germany's surrender, a frantic competition erupted between the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union. American technical intelligence teams fanned out across the Western occupation zones with urgent orders: secure operational Panthers before Soviet forces arrived and ship them back to testing facilities. The British took a bold approach. At captured German factories, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers used German workers and leftover components to assemble brand-new Panthers from scratch in summer 1945. These British-built Panthers became some of the most thoroughly studied examples in existence. The technology was revolutionary. The Panther's 75mm gun could penetrate 140mm of armor at 1,000 meters. No Allied tank gun of similar caliber came close. American ordnance officers at Aberdeen Proving Ground received 14 Panthers for evaluation. The Soviets secured dozens more. Each nation dissected these machines with surgical precision, reverse engineering the future of armored warfare. A classified American assessment concluded that the Panther represented a significant leap forward, but noted its critical weakness. The transmission system, overworked by the tank's 45-ton weight, failed with alarming frequency. Still, the influence was undeniable. American post-war designs incorporated sloped armor concepts directly from the Panther. Soviet engineers applied lessons to their T-54 programs. The French would take their fascination even further. Of all nations that acquired Panthers after the war, France made the most dramatic use of them. French occupation forces discovered approximately 80 operational or repairable Panthers scattered across Germany. By early 1946, France had assembled enough to equip 2 full units, with approximately 50 Panthers entering service, repainted in olive drab and marked with French registration plates. For French tank crews, operating Panthers was a double-edged sword. The firepower was extraordinary, superior to anything in their inventory. But mechanical nightmares began immediately. Spare parts were impossible to source. Germany's factories lay in ruins. Engines seized. Transmissions failed. The complex suspension system became a maintenance catastrophe. A classified French report from 1947 praised the gun and armor but catalogued a litany of mechanical failures. The engine's service life was brutally short, approximately 1,000 kilometers between overhauls. Panthers suffered chronic fuel pump failures, electrical breakdowns, and steering malfunctions. Yet France persevered. In 1948, Panthers participated in military parades through Paris, symbolizing renewed military strength. But by 1950, with spare parts exhausted and most Panthers immobilized, France replaced them with domestically produced tanks. Several were transferred to AMX facilities for study. French engineers would carry forward critical lessons. The oscillating turret design in later French prototypes drew direct inspiration from Panther observations. Eastern European nations received Panthers through Soviet war reparations. In May 1946, Romania received 13 Panthers from Soviet stockpiles. Romanian crews found them mechanically complex and temperamental. The engines required high-octane fuel Romania struggled to supply. Spare parts were non-existent. On May 1, 1948, Romanian Panthers rolled through Bucharest in a propaganda parade, but most couldn't travel more than a few dozen kilometers without mechanical failure. By 1950, with Soviet T-34-85s arriving, the Panthers became obsolete. All 13 were scrapped by 1954. Bulgaria's experience was even more remarkable. In 1945, Bulgaria received 15 Panthers from Soviet stocks. Within a year, operational Panthers dropped from 14 to 6. By 1947, only a single Panther remained working. Rather than scrap these immobilized tanks, Bulgarian planners conceived an unusual solution. As Cold War tensions escalated, Bulgaria faced perceived threats from NATO-aligned Turkey. Unable to maintain mobile forces, Bulgarian engineers converted disabled German tanks into static fortifications along the southeastern border. The result was the Krali-Marko line. Immobilized Panthers were dug into prepared positions. Engineers removed engines and running gear. What remained were turrets and hulls, transformed into reinforced pillboxes, positioned hull down, with commanding fields of fire. The Krali-Marko line represented both ingenuity and desperation. Germany's most advanced medium tank reduced to immobile bunkers along a forgotten border. Many installations were decommissioned during the 1950s. In recent years, photographs have emerged showing rusted hulls still visible in Bulgarian fields, ghostly remnants of this unusual defensive line. Across the Atlantic, the United States took a methodical approach. 14 Panthers shipped to American testing facilities underwent exhaustive evaluation. At Aberdeen Proving Ground, Panthers were subjected to live fire trials to identify vulnerabilities. American gunners fired 76mm, 90mm, and 105mm rounds at Panther hulls. Engineers documented penetration patterns and armor failure points. The majority were eventually scrapped, but 5 survived, the only Panthers preserved on American soil. The crown jewel sits at the American Heritage Museum in Hudson, Massachusetts. This restored AOSF-A variant features an overhauled Maybach engine, operational tracks, and functional turret traverse. The restoration represents thousands of hours sourcing components from multiple wrecks. 4 additional Panthers reside at Fort Benning, Georgia, awaiting restoration funding. These include 1 AOSF-A, 2 AOSF-Gs, and the rarest prize, a Panther II prototype hull. The Panther II project aimed to create an upgraded version with thicker armor and improved reliability, but was cancelled before production, making this one of the only surviving traces of Germany's ambitious upgrade plan. Beyond America, a handful of Panthers became museum pieces. Germany's Deutsches Panzer Museum in Munster houses an AOSF-A in running condition, sold to Sweden in 1948 for evaluation, tested for 13 years, then returned to Germany in 1961. At Bovington Tank Museum in England, visitors examine one of the British-assembled Panthers built in summer 1945 under REM supervision. France's Musée des Blindes at Saumur preserves an AOSF-G, recently restored to running condition. Russia's Kubinka Tank Museum houses an AOSF-G captured during the war. Other Panthers rest as battlefield monuments. At Celles, Belgium, a Panther, destroyed during the Battle of the Bulge, remains where it fell in December 1944, a permanent memorial to armored combat. The Panther's influence shaped armored warfare through the 1950s and beyond. American tank designers recognized that sloped armor provided superior protection. Post-war American designs, from the M26 Pershing through the M48 Patton, incorporated sophisticated sloping schemes directly inspired by German practice. Soviet engineers carried forward critical lessons. The legendary T-54, one of history's most successful tank designs, refined these concepts. France's AMX program drew extensively from Panther observations. The AMX-13 light tank mounted a gun derived directly from the Panther's 75mm weapon. The Panther had demonstrated that a medium tank could combine heavy tank firepower with reasonable mobility, a lesson pointing toward the post-war main battle tank concept. Yet the Panther's legacy also carried warnings. German engineers had pushed technology beyond their industrial capacity to manufacture reliably. Post-war designers absorbed these lessons. Reliability and maintainability became design priorities alongside firepower and armor. Today, fewer than 40 Panthers survive worldwide. Most rest in museums, carefully preserved artifacts. Perhaps a dozen remain in running condition, their engines capable of roaring to life during special events. For visitors who stand before a preserved Panther, the experience is visceral. The sheer size dominates. 8.6 meters long, nearly 3 meters tall. The sloped frontal armor reveals its deadly purpose, every angle calculated to deflect incoming shells. The 75mm gun barrel extends like an accusing finger, a weapon capable of destroying enemy armor at distances where return fire was ineffective. Veterans who faced Panthers in combat left testimonies about these encounters. An American tank destroyer crew member recalled watching a Panther emerge from fog on a Belgian road, the desperate race to fire first, the terror of watching their shell ricochet harmlessly. For historians and preservationists, each surviving Panther represents more than military hardware. They embody a specific historical moment when industrial warfare reached a terrifying apex. The final accounting is sobering. Of over 6,000 Panthers produced, fewer than 40 remain. Less than 1% survived. Each represents countless hours of labor and serves multiple purposes now. They remind us that technology alone cannot win wars, that logistics, industrial capacity, and numerical advantage often trump sophisticated design. They preserve engineering knowledge from an era of rapid wartime innovation, and they stand as monuments to the moment when armor, firepower, and mobility converged in designs that would define tank warfare for decades to come. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of World War II's most influential weapons, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from history's most pivotal moments. Until next time, remember that every artifact has a story, and sometimes those stories change the world.